Hi, I'm Vic DiCara, and we're continuing to discuss my new book, Great Big Crystal Ball in the Sky, Part 1. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 2, beginning of Chapter 2. So last time we learned that the core of astrology is the science of telling time. So the first astrologers, they were telling time more than telling fortunes. But the interesting thing is that telling the time is not much different than telling a fortune, because knowing the time is pretty much the same thing as knowing the future. It's like, for example, if you know that right now it's 8 o'clock in the morning, then you know that the sun rose about an hour and a half ago. You know the past by knowing the present. Or you know that you have, a full day ahead of you before the sun is going to set. So you kind of know the future as well just by knowing the present. If you know that it's, kind of the end of February, then you know how much longer you have to wait before it's going to stop being so cold. So, in the book, I give an example of kids playing baseball. If you just look at some kids playing baseball, and you just see one moment where the ball is in midair, headed from the pitcher to the batter, then you can make a prediction about where the ball has been 5 seconds ago, 3 seconds ago, 1 second ago, where it will be a second from now. The likelihood of the batter hitting it, where it might go, just by knowing one point in time. But the thing is, the more clearly you know the one point in time, the more clearly you can infer or extrapolate or deduce the conditions in the other points in time. I'll read a little bit. Past, present, and future are three angles on the same thing, time. We usually think of the three phases of time as disjointed and different from one another, but they are one thing seen from three different vantage points. Okay? So we usually think, well, past is one thing, present is another thing, future is something totally different. But it's not the way it is. Past, present, and future are three faces in the same animal. Or they're three windows into the same room. Since past, present, and future are merely three windows in the same entity, it is theoretically rational that by knowing one of them, you gain access to all of them. If there's three windows looking into the same room, it's rational that by looking in one window, you can understand what you would see from any of the three windows. The present inherently contains within it information about the past and future. The more clearly you know one point in time, the more accurately you can calculate what the other points are like. Okay, so now that's cool. What does it have to do with Saturn and, astrology? The movement of heavenly luminaries are inseparable from the flow of time, right? We we figured out that the only way you can tell time is by watching how the sun moves through the heavens. It's the only way you can know what time it is. And then to get more information about time, you also see how the moon moves. And then how do they move against the stars? Or how do they move in relation to the earth? So by calculating the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, you can tell what time it is in great detail. You can get all the modern stuff that we have: seconds, minutes, hours, weeks, months, years, and even greater units. So it's the movements of heavenly luminaries are inseparable from the flow of time, so it is plausible that the positions of the planets contain key information to describe moments in time. So you see, the theory is, if you know one point in time, you can extrapolate information about the other points. So if you know the present, you can know the future and the past. That's the theory. Now, where does astrology come in? Where do planets and stuff like that come in? Because by observing the motions of the planets, we know what time it is. So it's rational that by observing the planets, we can know the future. Because observing the planets gives us information about a moment in time, and by knowing a moment in time, we can extrapolate the conditions in other moments in time. And then there's one more little paragraph in this section that I want to cover today, which is a very quick introduction to how this works. The whole part 2 of this series, this is just part 1, the great big crystal ball in the sky. But the whole part 2 will be extrapolating more on this paragraph that I'm about to read. But for now, here's just this quick introduction. The theory is that this key information is coded into a rich natural symbolism arising from an elaborate exposition on simple, self-evident metaphors. So the positions of the planets can give you information about the moment in time through the natural symbolism of their positions. For example, one of the key natural symbols is that the sunrise represents birth and the sunset represents death. So therefore the east is birth, beginnings, etc. The west is endings, death. So the whole symbolic structure of astrology is based on extrapolations, elaborate extrapolations of these very simple, basic, natural, self-evident symbolisms. So that's how the astrological way of telling time gives you more than just a timestamp, like a digital timestamp. It gives you much more than that. It gives you symbolic information about that moment in time. And by extrapolating that symbolism, you can know that moment in time symbolically speaking, and therefore you can know the other moments in time symbolically speaking as well. And that's how astrology eventually develops into the science of knowing something about the future and the past as well as the present. So that's all for this week. Next week we'll keep going, so stay tuned. Thank you.